Welcome back to the Team Orders podcast. My name is Seb.
I'm Victor.
And Victor, I think how we need to start this episode is, one, did I predict Oscar Piastri to win the race?
Yes.
Yes. Do I need to apologize to all of Australia?
Yes.
Yes. 3, will I predict Oscar to win again next year? Also yes.
Why? He's not going to finish if you say so. We haven't had an
Exactly.
Australian. Has an Australian ever finished on the podium in Melbourne?
Maybe did Danny Rick ever? I don't
know.
He did.
I don't think he did.
He got
Neither did Mark
disqualified.
Webber.
Yeah, Danny Rick got disqualified.
So you have single-handedly stopped an Australian being on the podium for the first time ever in Australia.
Australia, I'm sorry. Anyway, welcome back to episode 2 of our brand new Formula One podcast, and welcome to the Australian review. The first race of the year just happened, and here are our thoughts. Victor, how did you enjoy that first race? And also, was there any struggle for you, staying up for the race, especially because on our time, the race started at 11 p.m. Eastern, and on top of that, we also had daylight saving, so we had one less hour to sleep last night.
Yes. Well, I was able to stay up fine. The chaos of the race kept me up. It was actually very entertaining, which is not what we were expecting. But with all the new current regulations, the difficult part was waking up this morning. I think I got a total of 4 hours of sleep. But, oh well, here we are. I was very entertained last night with the race. I thought the new regulations brought some interesting excitement, but not in the way that most people maybe thought. I think that the reason we had so much chaos is because none of the teams knew exactly what to expect or what they were doing. They still were trying to figure out all the systems in their cars, and not everybody understood race starts properly, and that's why the race start was as if you go onto Spotify and shuffle all your liked songs. But yeah, so absolute chaos and amazing racing for the first couple of laps, right?
Yeah, chaos, especially, that start. It was funny when I saw Charles was being like, that cheeky person with the lights out, very quick, didn't let us do any preparation, didn't let us charge the battery to the fullest. But the Ferrari still had a great start, as we did see in preseason testing. But then it was, such an interesting cat and mouse in the first 10 to 15 laps between, George Russell and between Charles Leclerc and each other, using the battery on one lap, recharging the battery on another lap. It was actually pretty good racing, and I was very surprised that we actually got to see, Mercedes versus Ferrari fight out, because from the weekend, it really seemed that Mercedes were the best team, that had the best car. And bro, Victor, Mercedes, they got us. The sandbagging rumors were so true. I remember when we were watching FP3 and George was like, there's like a minute or two left. Let me just take the sandbag off the car. Let me set a 19.0, 8/10
how much I was in so much despair. I was so happy Ferrari was finally back on top. And then, of course, as we all suspected, Mercedes takes their sandbag off, which later in qualifying, Lando Norris hit. Ha ha ha. But they took their sandbags off, and all of a sudden they're almost a second quicker than everybody else in the field or the next closest car, especially during qualifying. And we're like, where did that come from? Where did it come from?
Yeah, very, very impressive by Mercedes. Very impressive by George. I think he had a very clean weekend, especially, with these new regs, first race of the season. Very impressed by George, and especially, the racing with Charles Leclerc. But I think we also need to give our kudos to Ferrari, even though they were, on a one lap pace in quali, pretty slow compared to Mercedes. I was very impressed with their race trim. And seeing Charles and Lewis, even Lewis, because he was like, a few seconds back after, the start, he came back and he was in that fight. Like George was in a Ferrari sandwich. And, they could have, been in that fight for the race win. But unless, our favorite people, our favorite clowns, of this world, are the strategists at Ferrari.
Yeah. Well, and here's what really frustrates me about Ferrari is that the strategy decisions that they make aren't necessarily the wrong ones on paper. Like today, the fastest time around the circuit was indeed a one-stop, right? So they were running what was the fastest race on paper, but races aren't run on paper. Racing is a relative sport. It's not about getting to the finish line in the fastest amount of time possible. It's just getting there before everybody else. Now, I know I sound like Will Buxton, but the truth is that that you have to react to everybody else and what they are doing on track. I mean, we saw this happen in Qatar with the McLarens, right? They were the only ones not to pit under that safety car. And what ended up happening? They ended up losing the race and almost the WDC because of it, and thankfully they were able to recover at the end. But in this case, Ferrari had the chance to pit under the VSC like the Mercedes did. Not once, but twice. They had 2 full laps under the VSC the first time around to pit the cars. And they could have, if they didn't want to double stack, they could have pit Charles first and then Lewis on the next one, or vice versa. Or what they should have done, in my opinion, was split the cars. Have, maybe Charles stay out and Lewis come into the pits. And, eventually Lewis would catch up. Maybe Charles would be unhappy, but you preserve a great team result. Maybe, you are able to challenge for that first place, maybe second place, and you get second and fourth instead of third and fourth, or first and third. Who knows? But instead, they decided to stay out. And then there was another VSC. And where were they on the track? They were entering the last turn. And they did have enough time to react to it, They had maybe, 3 seconds to react to that VSC, which, doesn't sound like a lot of time. But a driver, when you're slowing down for a VSC and you're right next to the pit lane, what's the first thing you think about? And they chose not to pit there either. So 3 times. Oh, and then the pit lane got closed. So the next time they came around to it, they weren't able to pit. They had 3 chances and didn't take a single one of them.
Victor, I hate to say it, but you agree with Lewis Hamilton, your favorite friend.
Oh, no. Okay, so for those of you who do not know, I do not like Lewis. I've never been a huge fan of him. And him racing for Ferrari has made me have a different view of him and appreciate him in a different manner. And so me agreeing with Lewis is a big step in personal development for me. But yes, I do agree with Lewis. He was the one saying, hey, we should have at least split the cars at the very least, or pit under the VSC. And yes, McLaren was fast. They were very fast. They had the pace. They, have the best engine aero combo and the best engine straight out. But we saw how Charles was able to make life an inconvenience for George for 10 laps. Charles's battery deployment was so much better than George's. And that's why he was able to overtake him midway through the lap and not just into turn 1 or 2 or 3 as George was doing. He was able to get the overtake done mid-turn or mid-lap.
Yeah. I think I found it very funny in one of Charles's radio messages. It feels like I have a mushroom from Mario Kart. That's such an interesting way of explaining these new battery and how the drivers are managing the battery, having to charge it and then use it, and then especially, the boost button when you're within a second. It's been very interesting, and I'm actually kind of excited because it did make for some really great racing. And I really wished that we could have seen, Ferrari versus Mercedes for way more than just the first like 10 to 15 laps. But I think it will be interesting because I think it's going to depend on track to track on battery usage. I think this was something. It was like a nice experiment, especially for this first race of the season, because Australia is very straight heavy.
Yeah,
there's very limited
braking.
very limited braking zones and opportunities to actually charge that battery. So it's going to be interesting to see as we go further along in the season and how different teams have strategies on using the battery.
Yeah, I mean, especially, China next week, we have lots of heavy braking zones. So there's going to be a lot more recharging going on. So it's going to be very interesting to see how teams adapt their setups to that, their driving styles, and the strategies at least. I do think that the cars will go relatively faster in China than they did here. But that is still to see. We don't know with these new regulations. It could be completely different. But yes, Mercedes, Ferrari was a very exciting part of the race for the first 10 laps, and then it was sulking for the rest. But, Seb, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the most exciting parts of the race that happened after lap 10 was the sheer amount of overtakes that Max Verstappen was able to make starting P20.
Yeah. I don't know, like I guess you could say overtakes, but as Max Verstappen mentioned in his post-race interview, he didn't really see as like fighting the cars and actually doing like proper overtakes. He kind of explained it as he just was like passing them because, as he mentioned in his interview, most of the competition that he was making, getting through the grid, were around like a second to 2 seconds slower than him. So I think for Max, it was kind of fairly easy to get through the grid, but still very impressive. And it was a big shock, I think, for the both of us when we saw that crash in qualifying from Max.
Q1 as well, his very first flying lap.
First flying lap. And it's still hard to tell. I think I'm definitely leaning more towards like car error than actually driver error. I wonder, Victor, if you have a different opinion about that, but that's something that I don't know if Max could have done anything different.
No, I mean, he locked the rear axle. It is so rare. I cannot tell you how rare it is to lock your rear axle in Formula One. Not just one tire, both of them under heavy braking as well. So, Red Bull did confirm afterwards that it was a software glitch and that they were able to fix it and that they weren't worried about it in the slightest. But I mean, regardless, it was quite shocking to see him go out in Q1. I mean, I don't think Max has been out of Q1 in a long time. You know, I can't recall the last time he was out in Q1. But yeah,
it's definitely a shock. For the first quali of the year. But then, Max, I think he had a great start to the race, especially as he was complaining they had 0% battery, as the 5 lights were going out. And he made some great overtakes. There's this one clip going on of him going around the outside of Alex Albon. Actually beautiful overtaking for Max. And that's something I love about Max is he just goes for it. He goes for, if there's a gap, he will go for it, just like Alonso.
Even when there is no gap. I mean, he will overtake at every single point of the track. It doesn't matter whether it's an overtaking point or not. Like, he will get a move done if he wants it.
Yeah, and fair play to Max. I think he had a great race, but I think, especially, with the tire degradation, with the hard tires, the medium tires, I really thought he had a chance to get P5, to get Lando at the end. But I think what it showed is that I think the Red Bull, the overall pace of that Red Bull, it just isn't there yet. I think we saw that, clearly it's like Mercedes and Ferrari as like, up there as the two fastest cars. And then, kind of have like a debate between, Red Bull and McLaren. But I felt that, Lando just didn't really have that well of a race. And I think Max could have just gotten very easily that P5. But I was, pretty shocked that he couldn't, bring more of a fight to Lando in that ending stages of the race.
I think by the time he caught up to him, his tires were so cooked. I think both Red Bull and McLaren, especially McLaren, struggled with a lot of tire degradation. And I think by the time Max caught up to Lando, his tires were just too cooked to be able to get that overtake done. It's one thing catching, it's another thing making the overtake. But Lando, McLaren, can we talk about kind of a disaster weekend that they have? First of all, as you mentioned, Oscar Piastri, the home favorite, crashes not during the race, not during the formation lap. He actually one-ups Hajar's formation lap crash from last year and manages to crash during the reconnaissance lap, which is the lap that goes from the pit lane to the grid so that they can get the car ready to start. And he crashes in, turn 3, turn 4? Because of a torque spike. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on a reconnaissance lap.
Yeah, it's honestly unbelievable. And, Oscar, he's still such a young driver, but this is such a rookie mistake. Like, home race, McLaren are the two-time defending constructors champions. And to just bin it on the reconnaissance lap is honestly embarrassing. And I feel bad for Oscar. I think everyone does feel bad for Oscar. But that is poor. That is very poor. And, as you mentioned, it is kind of a disaster weekend for McLaren, especially with Lando. In practice, all over the place, issues with the car. And then in the race.
Reliability in FP1.
Yeah, reliability. It's like, what's going on in McLaren? Like, all over the place. And in the race, just kind of was like in no man's zone, I would say. With the Mercedes and the Ferraris kind of up there. And, with Hajar, with his engine failure, he was kind of just like on his own race until Max was trying to catch up at the end.
Yeah, I believe he finished more than a pit stop off the top two teams, which is, it feels like we're back in 2014 again.
Not good. That's not. I think Zach Brown's not. That's not gonna. He's not gonna be a happy man. No. After this weekend.
Especially if you look at how far they came from, the 2023 season. I believe it was the 23 season, where they had a 5-stop race in the first race of the season for Lando, to winning the World Championship back-to-back, the Constructors and the World Drivers' Championship for Lando in 2025. All of a sudden, what a huge drop-off in performance, And none of the fans are going to be happy, the team's not going to be happy, the sponsors aren't going to be happy that your team goes from being the best car on the grid to all of a sudden becoming fourth or third or fourth, battling for that third position with Red Bull. And I think I predicted this in our last episode, that I thought that they were going to be fourth best, and I don't think I'm too far off. I think that third place is going to go to whoever is going to be able to develop their car and understand their car better between McLaren and Red Bull.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, your shout of McLaren fourth place, that's looking pretty good. Yeah. Let's not talk about my shout of Oscar win the World Drivers' Championship, because that ain't happening.
Is that what you said, that Oscar was going to win the World Championship? Or
that was what my dark horse of the season?
Was that your dark horse of the season? Oh, no.
It was like...
Oh yeah, he's gonna mid-season driver swap. You've caused a mid-season driver swap.
I think I put a big curse. Yeah, I think I was like, Oscar to win Australia. He'll be my dark horse to win the championship.
No.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh dear, indeed.
Yeah. anyways, let's now transition into the midfield race. After the top four teams, and I think huge credit to our only rookie so far on the grid. You never know with with these F1 with these Red Bull teams. Arvid Lindblad, I think he had an amazing weekend, and this is something that I want to bring up. Is he had a very interesting quote with Jenson Button, saying, I think this was just like before the race started, and Jenson, he was talking about expectations and pressure, and as I think every driver has so much pressure, so much expectations. It's a lot to deal with, and especially for Arvid, 18 years old, first race in Formula One. This is his dream, and everyone's saying like, oh, like you have so much pressure, so much, happening. But I think Arvid had an amazing response to that question. He said, yeah, like I understand that there's always going to be pressure and these high expectations, but this has been my dream since I've been 5 years old, and I finally have made it to Formula One, and he just wants to go out there and drive the car and have fun. And I think that's a great mentality to have, because he can just go in that cockpit and only think about enjoying racing and enjoying driving that car. And I think, his mentality has shown very, very great professionalism and maturity for such a young individual. And I am really liking Arvid Lindblad.
I mean, I think this is one of the greatest debuts of all time. When was the last time well, at least in recent memory, when was the last time?
Do you not remember Kevin Magnussen 2014?
I don't think I was watching Formula One at that point. So at least in the times that I've been watching, I would say this has been one of the greatest rookie performances or debuts in recent memory. We'll go with that. But I mean, there was a point during the first lap where he was in third place.
Yeah.
It was Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Arvid Lindblad. And who would have thought? What did he start? He started 7th, 8th, I think, something like that. And he makes his way up to third. And Red Bull had battery deployment issues off the start, let's not forget. So that wasn't the battery doing its thing. That was him. That was him being able to control the wheel spin and getting up to speed and making the overtakes necessary to be in third place by the end of, I don't know, turn 3 or something. But hugely impressive. And his little battle that he had when Max caught up to him, he defended against Max for quite a couple of corners. And he was aggressive, and he was
feisty.
Making all the right... Yeah, he was making all the right moves, and he was keeping it clean as well, aggressive but clean. And I mean, if this is a taste of what we're getting, if this is what we're getting right now, can you imagine what's going to happen for the rest of the season? I mean, that RB looks like it's going to be the best of the rest, or it's going to be in a battle for the best of the rest with Audi, in my opinion. And if Arvid Lindblad is leading the chase against veteran Nico Hülkenberg, for example, and another young, exciting talent, Gabi Bortoleto, I think we're going to have a phenomenal season ahead of us for the battle of the best of the rest.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think Audi. It was kind of sad that we couldn't see Hülkenberg race and see the pace, the race pace he had today. But Gabi, I think, had a great race, great pace. Was up there with Arvid, and I think definitely exceeded my expectations, especially for Audi, especially coming from last year in that Kick Sauber, which they kind of had these like one-off races where they had pace, and then majority of the time it was kind of like fighting for that P10, for fighting for like those like small last points opportunities. But I'm liking Gabby. I think Gabby is a very young, great talent. I think he does bring a lot of mistakes though, which I think this was good from this weekend. He did no mistakes. So yeah, I'm looking forward, and especially he got that car into Q3. Couldn't set a lap time in Q3, but did make it to Q3 on lap time.
Yeah, I mean, there were some reliability issues that prevented him from doing his or participating in Q3, but he did make it into Q3, which was so largely impressive. One team that didn't make it into Q3, Williams.
What is going on? James Vowles.
I mean,
what is going on?
You spend the large part of a season, last season, forgetting about development for that season and really focusing on the new regulations the following season. It's like throwing in the scrubs, or tanking. Really, you're focusing on the next season or the couple seasons ahead, and you give up on the current year. And he did all of that. And I'm not just going to say James Vowles because we don't know. It could be just James Vowles. It could be the whole team. We don't know yet. But for Williams to do that and then not even show up to the Barcelona shakedown at the beginning of the season, and then be so far behind where they were last year in comparison to the rest of the grid is hugely disappointing for them. I mean, they've put in so much effort into being the best of the rest or being as close as possible to the front, and they've just completely missed.
After such a great season they had last year, I really had some hopes that this year they might have been in that fight for podiums and for even race wins. I think that was maybe my expectations for Williams because they were on such a good trajectory, and I honestly don't know what to say, and it's just so sad because I love Williams as a team. Carlos and Alex are one of my favorite drivers, and it's like, oh my God, it's like they're not on the same level as embarrassment as Aston Martin.
No.
But they're close. They're close.
Williams' battle with Haas is going to be interesting. Haas and Alpine, I would say. Because those teams I kind of put in, at the moment, I put in the same pool right now. I think with Williams, we're more disappointed because we had such high hopes for them. With Alpine, not so much. And Haas, they have two phenomenal drivers. One more than the other, but but I do feel like those are the ones who are going to be battling for that, P10, P9, P8 if they have a phenomenal drive, just to get the last scraps of those points. So the development war between them and the on-track battles is going to be super interesting to watch throughout the day. But yes, you mentioned Aston Martin. Of course, starting off the season with a double DNF, which isn't unexpected. But would you say that they had a better race than what we expected them to have?
I think Alonso had a great lap one.
Phenomenal lap one.
Phenomenal. I think it's really that really showed his 20 million years of race experience. Really came in handy lap one, and I think that it's such a hard thing right now for Aston Martin because they couldn't really partake in a lot of in practice that much, and qualifying it was very interesting. Like Stroll couldn't participate in qualifying, and Stroll gained and he was able to take part of the race even though he didn't was in that 107% rule.
Yep, they had to ask for an exception.
Yeah, an exception.
Did you see the document that the FIA issued where they published that they were giving him an exception?
No, I did not. What was it like?
So part of it is Aston Martin has to argue as to why this driver should be given an exception. So they started listing he has X amount of race starts. He has previously set lap times that are around, the average of this part of the pack. He has had one pole position before.
One pole position.
Which, hey, fair play to him. That was in Brazil, right?
That was in Turkey.
In
2020, yeah.
Yeah, and that crazy, crazy rain race. It was in the rain, I think, quali.
Yeah, it was.
And then he finished like P11. I don't know if he scored points that race, but
the only thing people remember that race is Lewis win, and that was kind of like an iconic Lewis win.
I remember, what was it? Charles losing out to Vettel in the last corner of the race for the P3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That was crazy. But yeah, I mean, Aston Martin, I think I'm curious to see how they are going to manage this relationship with Honda to help them get back on track, because the
rumors from after we recorded episode 1 to the race weekend, it was unbelievable. I don't know if you saw it, Victor. Like they did like a visit to the factory at Honda back late last year, and it was just a disaster. And it feels like there was like rumors that like the Honda factory, they were lying about performance to Aston Martin. And oh my God, like I don't know if any of this is true, but if it is, oh my God, this is things that you need to bring up, to the top. And I don't know if this was because this was like, post Adrian Newey becoming team principal, and I'm like, I don't know, it's bad.
So I read a little bit further into this, and apparently what happened was when Aston Martin approached Honda to create this partnership and purchase their engines for 2026 to 2031 at the very least. When they visited the factory, or they thought that they were partnering with the same team that developed the insane Honda engine that powered Red Bull to those for Max winning his 4 titles and those 2 Constructors' Championship. And apparently in November, they found out, or not in November, maybe it was in October, that it was a completely different team, that they were working with completely different engineers, that none of the engineers that they had visited 3 years ago or in 2023, none of those were there. It was a completely different team. And so now Aston Martin is pointing fingers at Honda saying, hey, this is your fault for lying to us, right? Which, if it is true, it's going to be one of the biggest scandals in recent history. And then Honda is saying, hey, no, it's Adrian Newey's fault for completely turning the development of the car upside down when he joined midway through the season. And that's just very destructive for any team, for any relationship, because they are stuck with this engine for the time being and for a while. So the best thing that they can do is stop this finger pointing and just settle on a solution to move forward. Because at the end of the day, currently, Aston Martin is P11. They have 0 points, and at the moment, they are worse off than Cadillac, whom I predicted to be the biggest flop of the season and struggle to score points, right? And if Aston Martin are unable to manage this relationship with Honda and turn it around, then they are going to be in the fight for P10. And by P10, I mean who gets the highest finishing positions, not the most amount of points.
It'll be Aston Martin versus Cadillac for that P10 for last place. But Victor, I raise you this question: can Cadillac come back from the dead? Because we saw that Alonso came back from the dead. Somehow we thought he retired the car, but no, he magically returned.
Yeah, 10 laps later, he came out and did a couple of laps just to test a couple of battery components, and then he retired again. And the funniest part of that was the timing screen that it showed, the Mercedes the time between the Mercedes and the Ferraris, plus 7 seconds, plus 3 seconds, plus 12 seconds, and then all the lapped cars, plus 1 lap, plus 1 lap, plus 2 laps, and then you just see Alonso plus 14 laps down.
Yeah. I think that's a first of me seeing someone re-enter the race. But yeah.
Checo did it in his last season with Red Bull. I forget in what race, but he came out, served a penalty that he had gotten, and then re-retired.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess it's not that uncommon. But yeah, Alonso re-entering the track was quite a surprise. I don't think either one of us expected that. But okay, Seb, who was apart from Alonso re-entering the track, who was your biggest surprise? Or what was your biggest surprise? And also, what was your biggest disappointment?
I think my biggest surprise is Ferrari. I
hope that's positive, man.
It's a very positive.
Okay.
Because after seeing how fast George and Mercedes were in qualifying, I could not see anyone competing with them in the race. Not a single team, not a single driver. And I was pleasantly surprised with Ferrari, with Charles, with Lewis, that in race trim, they could fight with Mercedes. And it gives me hope. I love Ferrari, but it gives me hope. I don't know if this is false hope, but it gives me hope that Ferrari can actually compete for race wins this season.
Let's hope
because, because what is Formula One if we don't have Ferrari competing for that top set of the podium? It's not Formula One.
None. Ferrari is the only team to have been in every single season.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah, and your biggest disappointment?
Biggest disappointment, I think, as we mentioned earlier, I think it's Williams. Williams, I think, are back in Narnia, back in their days when they were. I think it's it's funny. You have Mercedes, Ferrari in their own pack. You kind of have that midfield. You got Lando, Max, and then you have the Aston Martins and F7 and all the way down there. But then Williams are just like in that weird zone in the back of the pack, and they're just really off the pace and nowhere near the likes of Lindblad and Bortoleto, and it didn't really seem like they had any chance of competing for points this weekend. And that is my biggest disappointment is Williams.
My biggest disappointment is Ferrari.
Wait, what? What do you... Wait.
Listen, hear me out. I'm looking at this purely as a Ferrari fan right now. There was a chance to challenge, to make life an inconvenience for Mercedes the entire race. We saw how amazing the wheel-to-wheel battle was, but for the first 10 laps, right? And then, what do? Estrategia. There is no estrategia. You wait for the VSC to come out and you wait for for Mercedes to pit, and then you don't pit, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and you let them catch up to you, and then you have to do a pit stop, but your pit stop takes longer because it's not under the VSC, and then you lose the race. Again. Where have we seen this before, Seb? I'm so tired of it. But yeah, so Ferrari is my biggest disappointment. But my biggest surprise of the race, Arvid Lindblad. I was really not expecting him to be able to perform so well coming out of the gates. I mean, in recent memory, we've had rookies really struggle with their first races. I mean, Racing Bull's last rookie crashed out in the formation lap during his debut, Hajar, right? And Arvid Lindblad came out. He was, I mean, we already talked about him, but Arvid Lindblad came out hungry. He came out and made a statement. And he said, I am a great driver. I have great potential. And I am going to learn and I will develop as a driver and I will see success in my career.
So that was our biggest surprise and our biggest disappointment. Let us know down below in the comment section your biggest surprise and your biggest disappointment. We want to hear your thoughts, so make sure to put comments. And as you're already down there in the comments, make sure to hit a like and follow and subscribe. It will really help us as we continue to grow this F1 podcast.
Overall, man, I did enjoy this race. I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of actual racing that we had and the overtakes. I think there were 4 times as many overtakes this year as there were last year. I do think that number will come down as the development war starts and teams start to understand the car, but I very much enjoyed staying up late to watch the race, watching FP1, FP2, FP3, pre-race show, pre-qualifying show, quali, post-qualifying show, pre-race show, race, and post-race show. I watched it all.
Can you tell that we're F1 nerds?
No. Why? What makes you think that? But I'm very excited for the season to come and to see what happens in China, which is the next race next weekend. And
Double header.
Yes, we have a double header. And ladies and gentlemen, please make sure to tune in to our China preview episode, which will come out later in the week. It'll be a shorter episode. We'll break down the biggest storylines going into the race weekend, as well as give our predictions for going into the race weekend. And hopefully we can get them a little bit more correct this time. But
yeah, let's try not to jinx the hometown driver.
Well, there's no hometown favorite this time in China.
Zhu Guanyu will win the race.
We'll be replacing Oscar Piastri. But yes, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow us, and we shall see you later in the week. Goodbye.
Bye.